Pues, la primera pregunta tendría que ser, cuéntanos un poco de tu historia personal.
I'm sorry, my Spanish is not so good, so how I understand what you say? I have to tell personal...
Just talk about yourself.
Okay. I hope the next question will be in English, because otherwise we'll have a problem. Discommunication, which often happens. I'm a professional musician. I'm a classical pianist. I studied piano since I was 3 years old. But I also like art a lot. My father was a collector. And I decided to immigrate from Soviet Union because I'm very outspoken, let's say. And at some point I understood that it will be dangerous for me to remain there. I always want to travel around the world, and as you know, during Soviet time it was absolutely impossible to go anywhere. I don't like police state, I don't like to be monitored, I don't like people to tell me what to do, and to simply explain this, I do like freedom, I like my rights, I like to have my rights, and that was impossible. So it took me a long time to get out of Soviet Union, but I managed. And in 1973, I immigrated to Israel. I spent 6 or 7 months in Israel, and then I went to United States. Since then, I'm in United States. I understood right away that I can't be a teacher of piano because it's problematic there, and you have to be the highest qualification to. You need connections, and I didn't have anybody to help with this in this field. So the second easiest road for me was art, because that's what I knew, I understand, and I like and I love, and I had a lot of friends of artists. So in the beginning it was mostly antique, I was specialist in antiques, then it was contemporary art, and I learned Americana, and old art and new art, and then I kind of specify. By the time Ilya came, I was an advisor. Ilya wanted to leave Soviet Union a few times. So he applied for immigration twice. And he said it was like his feet was chained to the ground. He couldn't leave. He couldn't leave his friends. He couldn't leave people who were thinking like him. It was a very close circle of friends. He couldn't leave his family. He had a mother. And just simply his culture had an iron hold on him. But finally, he got an invitation. That was the first time one of Soviet artists went outside of Soviet Union without anybody, without chaperoning, without KGB agent traveling with him. He went alone to Austria. And that was the end of Soviet Union because he never returned back. Soviet Union failed, was perestroika. And so the next time we went to Russia, it was 2004. Ilya and I knew each other always, because I don't even remember the time when I didn't know Ilya. He's a relative of my family, it was the same family, more or less. And I didn't see him when I immigrated, all these years, which was a long time. And when he came, I offered him, we met again, and because I was an artist, I said, I would like to help you. And the rest is kind of public history.
Thank you very much, Emilia. That was a really nice, short description of your life. The next question is, I'm trying to, perdón, la siguiente pregunta es, trato de establecer cuál era la situación en la Unión Soviética. Perdón. Parece que hay una ruido de música aquí afuera. No sé si se puede hacer algo para evitarlo. Bien. Bueno, lo que voy a tratar de hacer ahora es establecer más o menos cuál era la circunstancia en la que Emilia Kabakov desarrolló su trabajo durante las décadas de los años 50, 60 y 70. Sabemos que Ilya se dedicaba a la ilustración de libros para niños. Es un trabajo bien pagado, creo. Y Por otro lado, también hacía arte visual, por el cual no recibía retribución alguna, y creo que tampoco exponía mucho su trabajo. Sin embargo, como tú lo has dicho hace un momento, Ilya parecía estar contento en la Unión Soviética porque tenía amigos, tenía un grupo. ¿Cuál era la recepción que tenía la obra artística de Emilia Kabakov en esas décadas que pasó en la Unión Soviética antes de emigrar?
I would try to have to say one thing. Ilya wasn't happy in Soviet Union. The problem was you can be happy because you have very close friend, and you can be very unhappy as an artist because there was no way for him to show his work. There was no freedom for him as an artist. Ilya is a professional artist. He started studying art practically from the childhood. He finished art school, he finished art institute, but the restriction of Soviet system, it's a totalitarian system, was that either after institute you follow the rules established by society and government, or you are nobody. So the situation with children books, actually Ilya didn't invent it. It was Malevich illustrated children books, Chagall, a lot of artists after revolution did illustrations, and the reason was you either do government commissions, so you do big panel, and there was a very big gradation, so people who did Lenin and Stalin, and somebody today told me that very selected artists were allowed to even paint Lenin or Stalin. I didn't know that. I was thinking, okay, that's kind of few artists. No, 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 they were selected. If somebody else would do this, that was illegal. That was, for me, that also was a revelation, and I am from Soviet Union. So either you do this, or you do political posters, or you do job which actually given to you by the government. You're an official artist. So when people say Ilya was official artist, and then underground also doing paintings in his own work, not exactly correct. He chose the easiest way out. He was illustrating children books, because children books in general, we could say it's apolitical. There is no politics, but it's also not so simple, because there was censorship even in children books. For example, if you make faces of people, they have to be very happy. Children has to be always smiling. Even rabbits has to be Soviet style. They have to be happy rabbits. Because why? We live in a happy country. We live in a paradise. How can any animal will be unhappy on the picture? So every book for a child has to present our society as the best in the world. Doesn't matter if it's human society or animal society. It has to be happy because it's ours. And Ilya managed to do this quite nicely. He learned all the rules, and he learned how to follow these rules and make money for living. That was his day job. But he didn't work every day, because artist is, even in Russia, it's a free profession. So he managed to do it because he's a very good draftsman. 3 months a year, children books, commissions from children's houses. And the rest of the time, it was his own studio. And that also was important for him, because if you don't belong to Artists Union, and let's not make a mistake, Artists Union, it's not a communist party, it's a workers' union. So he was a member of Artists Union, which gave him possibility to have a studio, to have paints, to have brushes. If you are not member, you can't go to the special store, it's closed for you. You are not able to buy any art material. And in his studio, Ilya was doing things that he wants to do. He didn't know much about the West art at that time because there was no information. But starting from 70s, 80s, some information started to come in the form of magazine from the West. Different magazines, different pictures. Also, Ilya said when he was studying at Art Institute, they were shown photographs of painting by Picasso, for example, Dubuffet, and they would say, this is a capitalist art, this is bourgeois art, it's terrible, you can't paint like this. So that, but for the artists, for the students, that was information about the Western art. So Soviet art went completely different way. It went in the way of social realism. And that was, I would say, similar art was in America in 1930, and similar art was in Germany during Hitler's time. And that was mostly a situation which was for him in Soviet Union. But despite all this depressive situation, despite all this government iron rules, group of people, group of artists, poets, writers, musicians managed to create some kind of secret society. They didn't have art historians which would look at their work. They didn't have collectors, they didn't have art galleries, museum would show their work. But they managed to create and to show their work to each other. So they were, all these they didn't have an artistic society, collectors, art critics, art historians to each other. So they bring the paintings to friend's studio, or they come to artist studio, and they have something to eat, and they have like a little party, and they show the work, and then they give their opinion. The only problem with this situation was, like in every close society or family, everybody tried to tell each other a very nice thing. So they all will tell each other that they are geniuses, and everybody believes that he's a genius. And when perestroika happened, and all this paradise fell apart, and paradise depends, obviously, if it's surrounded by hell, it can exist. If the hell fell apart, paradise obviously also fell apart. So they come into the open world, into the democratic society, into the art world of universe. And then the completely different story started.
Thank you, Emilia. The next question is really short. Would you say that Ilya Kabakov was a dissident and not an opponent of the system?
I would say like this. Ilya has two personalities. On one side, he's a coward. On another side, he has a personality of a hero. He's afraid to say his opinion publicly. He's afraid to be dissident, but he's a hidden dissident and hidden opponent. So all his art he created in Soviet Union, and even for a long time after, is very ironic. It has all this hidden critique of the system, of the people suffering during this system. It's sometimes very subtle. It's very conceptual. There is always a concept. There is always a story behind this, but yes, he was an opponent of the system.
Okay. As I was saying, como yo había dicho al principio, las parejas, como había dicho al principio, las parejas que trabajan juntas en el arte son no muy frecuentes. El tema de la singularidad y la individualidad de la obra aparece como una frontera que a veces impide el trabajo en equipo. ¿Cómo lo llevan ustedes dos? ¿Qué parte del trabajo haces tú y qué parte del trabajo hace Ilya?
Well, I can give one answer which is very straight. I don't paint, because I'm not a painter actually. But I have my role in installation. I can come up with a concept. We discuss everything. Paintings, Ilya does by himself, but he very often calls me and asks my opinion. I'm very careful with my opinion because I always remember that I am not a professional artist. I have a very good eye. I understand what he's doing, but it's a different story. We survive together for so many years because maybe of this understanding of something that you can't impose on creativity of the other person. So I never say no to him. I never criticize him as a wife, but I do criticize him as a professional. It's a very different story, and he understands this. He never criticized me as a wife, but he can criticize me as professional. Let's say this. I don't paint, but I do everything else also.
Thank you, Emilia. Bien, la siguiente pregunta es para Matthew. Matthew escribió un libro por el cual recibió un premio muy connotado. El título del libro se llama El grupo experimental Ilya Kabakov, el conceptualismo de Moscú y las vanguardias soviéticas, y está publicado por la Universidad de Chicago. Ya obtuvo el premio Vicinich para la contribución a estudios de Rusia y de Europa Oriental. Mateo, bienvenido a esta charla. ¿Podrías describirnos cuáles son esas diferencias que tú analizas en tu libro entre el grupo experimental al que pertenecía Emilia Kabakov y los otros grupos artísticos que estaban activos en la Unión Soviética en el periodo 1955 a 1985?
Yeah, well, it's fairly simple that Kabakov understood that if you're working in the provincial situation, someplace outside of an art center, out away from New York or Paris at that time, it was crucial that you made non-art, not art. Because if you're making art in a provincial situation, your mind is so thoroughly colonized by these ideas from the center that it's not going to feel as if it's your own. So he started from a position of making things that we look at them, and I'm not sure if we have a reproduction that will pop up, but they don't look very much like art. They look like, hey, Emilia, you want to say something? Oh, you want to get in there? Okay. And so I think that all of his friends were making work that they were paintings, they were drawings, they were sculptures, they were roughly 4 feet high, they were made out of wood, they were made out of stone. He was making things out of masonite, things that he found on the street, things that didn't look like art or feel like art when his friends saw them. In fact, he would have to tell people when they would go to the studio, that's my art. It wouldn't be clear what to look at. And even when someone looked at it, they'd think, is it a joke? Is he serious? It's that orientation that you see throughout the work from the beginning, I think, and even today, is, I think, and Emilia, you can correct me, I think if this exhibition works, it should create a situation in which you're not fully aware of what the message is. There's not a message. There's an experience that you have, and you narrate the experience to yourself. That's kind of something that's continuous throughout all of the art.
Unfortunately, we have slides wrong way, because we were supposed to start from the early works and we start from the last one. So what you see now, it starts from the last exhibition we did in January, right now in May in Paris, and then it's go all the way back. Okay, so just so you know that.
Well, Ilya ha dicho que él hace arte conceptual. Sin embargo, aquí nosotros tenemos una idea del arte conceptual que ha sido derivada de el concepto o de las prácticas de grupos en Norteamérica y en Inglaterra. El tipo de arte conceptual que hacen Ilya y Emilia Kabakov tiene un giro narrativo, poético, que no es frecuente en esa escuela de arte conceptual. ¿Cuál dirías tú, Mateo, que es la característica de este arte conceptual que hacía Emilia y Ilya, y también el grupo del Boulevard Sretinsky en los años 60 y 70?
My first question would be, I doubt that Emilia, would you call yourself a conceptual artist? No. So Emilia's not a conceptual artist. We've established that. So I don't know, it's an interesting transition to this narrative mode. Ilya, one of the things that's very striking, I've spent a lot of time working with his writing, and what's most striking about Ilya is that he sits down at a table, I've seen him do it, and he just starts writing out these stories. And I know that the original manuscripts, I've seen them, he doesn't edit them really. He writes them out, he hands them over, they get manufactured into something larger. And so I've always thought that Ilya was a writer in a very crucial way. He's an author, and it's not just hyperbole to say that he's continuous with the Russian literary tradition, which always was much stronger, obviously, at least internationally, than the tradition in the visual arts. And so I think Emilia and Ilya are working in a mixed media that is somewhere between literature and art.
I would even say that he's a writer. I would say he's a storyteller. It sounds better because every installation has a narrative, and it's definitely very specific for Russian literature, but also for Russian art. And Ilya started using this narrative practically like the first artist. His paintings always have a story. Installations have a story. So now we do stories together, but in the very beginning he did them himself. And very often when he came to the West, people didn't understand why exactly he's an artist. Because as you can see, painting has text, or painting has some text next to it, or even in the paintings there is a lot of text. Why? What kind of art it is? It's conceptual, but why there is so much text there? Why do you have to tell the story? Why can't you just paint? And I think that's the way his mind works. It first creates some fantasy with a narrative. It's about some character. He created a lot of characters, and we continue with this tradition. We still do characters. And when we were talking about why characters, at some point I asked, why characters? What did you try to hide? He said, I don't know. But characters, we are used to characters in literature. We're absolutely not used to characters in art, in the visual art. So in a way, I would say it was some kind of unconscious desire to protect himself as a person from the authorities. On the other hand, it was a desire of the artist and fear of the artist to hear the judgment of his work. So you always can distance yourself from the work. And you can say, it's not me. It's this character who did this painting or this installation. I have nothing to do with it. And then stay on the side and watch the reaction and listen to the critique.
Well, that's very interesting. Me preocupa también la idea de establecer qué fue dentro de todos los artistas soviéticos que emigraron a partir de las reformas que se establecieron en la Unión Soviética, la perestroika. ¿Por qué Ilya ocupa ese lugar de punta de lanza en el movimiento de artistas que emigraron a Occidente? ¿Qué es lo que hizo que Emilia ocupara esa atención del público? ¿Podrías responder esa pregunta, Mathieu?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that really comes through very clearly in Ilya's work and Ilya and Emilia's work is that Ilya realized that if you're an artist who's not from essentially the United States or a few other countries, you will always be a representative of the country you live in or have lived in. That's not a choice that you make, that's simply a reality that you encounter. And unfortunately, the other artists in Moscow, I don't think they fully embraced this negative reality. They thought that they could continue to simply make art as if they're artists. And Ilya realized he would have to become, whether he liked it or not, a Russian artist. And he would have to make art that appeared to a non-Russian public as Russian. And so the struggle was, how do you maintain the intellectual achievement, the seriousness, the complexity, the play, the paradox, the literary sensibility, and then make it available to a larger audience? At least that's my version. Emilia will have a more.
There is one more aspect to this. The rest of Russian artists, and it's not only going for Russian, it's going for Mexican, because I was in the museum yesterday and I saw a lot of works. It's a good work, but There is one interesting question. You actually mentioned this. They look like the other works from different countries. There is a Russian artist which did similar work. There is a Czechoslovakian artist, Polish artist. I don't know. You name the country and you have something very similar. And the reason is because this is a local artist. It's a national artist. They never intended to show their work outside. They never use international language. They always oriented at their own audience. The audience they know how to get their audience. And they doing local things and using local language. Ilya never did this. Ilya always was oriented on much bigger audience. He always was thinking in the terms of history of art, cultural history of art. And cultural history of art is universal culture. So you have to learn how to keep your local flavor, how to be your national artist, but how to express content and context of your work and of your country in an international language. He learned how to do this, and he was very successful with this, and this is very difficult.
Okay. A partir de 1987, cuando Ilya abandona definitivamente la Unión Soviética, podríamos decir que terminó un periodo de producción que estaba relacionado con la utopía en la Unión Soviética. Hubo una decisión consciente de él de decir, ya no voy a hablar de esto, voy a hablar de otro tema, voy a tratar de ser más internacional, o él se sintió obligado o sintió que era una necesidad contarle a Occidente qué sucedía durante todas esas décadas en la Unión Soviética. La pregunta es para los dos, ¿quién quiere contestar?
So, yeah, my question would be why is it so important to be internationally accepted? Why wouldn't it be okay not to be okay?
Well, it's ambition of the artist to be understood by everybody. Art history, in a way, there is two art histories. There is a local art history and international art history. And I think every artist would like to be in the international art history, not in the local one. And in this case, I think it's it's kind of understood, and it's very simple to understand as well. Your question, first of all, I don't think it was a production about utopia when he was in Soviet Union. It was about human condition. When Ilya left Soviet Union, when he actually went for exhibition and never come back, because we never say he immigrated, I immigrated, he never did. And what happened, he felt like a traveler. He felt like somebody from the island who come to the world, open world, and he wants to tell the story about his own island. He come from another planet, and you don't know how we live on this planet. You have no idea. Of course, you have some ideas, but it's absolutely not exactly how we live. And so he was an insider who come with a story, and that's at that time many Russians considered him a traitor, because he brought outside, they were thinking, dirty clothes of Soviet Union, dirty clothes of its citizens. For example, when we did the toilet installation at Documenta, and you saw this installation, it was about life. It was about, it's a metaphor of life. It was something which, I was just explaining the content so you understand what it is. As a visitor of exhibition, there was a big international exhibition, come behind the museum and they see the public toilet. You know, the one which probably you have in Mexico at the train station. There is one side says for men and another side says for women. The visitor go into the public toilet, he absolutely has no idea what he's going to see inside. He fully understands that he is entering the space, public space of public toilet. When he walk inside, suddenly he sees that, yes, it is a toilet, but there is a family life there. There is a kitchen, they use these holes for the toilet and hanging clothes over it. There is a children's corner with the toys. There is a living room. There is a bedroom. Some family made a very comfortable life. So what is it exactly? On one hand, it's a contradiction between public and private space. So we come to the public space, we don't expect to see private, but that's what we actually see. And it's a metaphor of life. Our country is a toilet, but we managed to have a very comfortable life. And I think a lot of countries in the world can say this, yes, our country is a toilet. But look, even in the toilet, we can make a nice bourgeois life. We can live there. Russians were very upset with this. They were screaming at us. At every lecture we would have, somebody would stand and said, why did you depict Russian living in the toilets? We don't live in the toilets. And you would say, do you understand the metaphor? This work is a metaphor of life. It's not about you, it's not about us, it's about universal life, universal situation. So you understand what metaphor is? Yes, I understand, but why did you depict it as Russian living in a toilet?
Wow, muy bien. Ahora vamos a entrar en el tema de la exposición que nos convoca en este recinto, el antiguo Colegio de San Ildefonso, el tema de la angelología. ¿De dónde surge el interés de la figura de los ángeles en la obra de Emilia Kabakov? ¿Cuándo empiezan a pensar en desarrollar una exposición con este tema muy específico de los ángeles, Emilia?
Angels appears in the work very early. If we start literally talking about it, that maybe it's because when Ilya was a child during the war, his mother and him stay in monastery, and he has a lot of time to wander around, so he saw all the icons, he saw the pictures of the angels, and it's probably stay with him for the rest of his life. On the other hand, in the 60s, when he started doing albums with the Wings, angel was somebody who is a messenger. It's a hope, it's connection with God, and in a way, it's our salvation. We hope to become an angel after we die. We expect angel to fulfill our wishes. We expect angel to make connection between God and us. There is so many meanings to this. And then we look back at the works and we discover that actually we have a lot of works with angels. So, and we decide to put them together. And therefore we have the whole body of works which come out as an exhibition, and what's the best title for it? As an Angelología. What's the paradise where angels live? It's utopia. So it's at the same time being about angels, it's also a little bit about utopia, because we dream to create utopia on earth. We're trying to change our life, we're trying to change ourselves, we're trying to change the world. But church already told us hundreds of years ago that paradise can't exist on earth. It exists somewhere in this other life. We can't have it in this life, and we keep trying. So we put all this as an exhibition, and if people walk in, of course, it's, you look from a point of view, you see the objects, you see the paintings, you see the drawings, but we have to also think about this exhibition from theological point of view, from philosophical point of view. That's what we would like people to do, spend some time, start thinking.
Ok, esta pregunta es para Matthew. Parecería, Matthew, que viniendo de una realidad tan dura como la Unión Soviética, de repente el tema de Los Ángeles parece un poco fuera de lugar, como que la manera en que está enfocada el tema de la utopía es un tanto absurda, un tanto fantasiosa. Uno pensaría que para artistas que vivieron en un sistema que propuso la utopía comunista, la posición sería un poco más políticamente obvia o políticamente manifiesta. Sin embargo, la figura de los ángeles y las alas parecen como proponer algo que va más allá de lo social, que va más allá de una agenda política. ¿Cómo lo interpretas tú?
Yeah, some of the work is actually from the much earlier time period. Some of it's actually from the 1970s, from the work that's in the show. So that's very interesting that there's this entire time period present. So it does go back to the Soviet period. One of the things that strikes me about the angel is its availability for allegory in all sorts of different ways. And I think one allegory is the Soviet Union and the Soviet utopia, but it's merely one allegory. And I think the play of allegories, of each one of us, depending on our own background, will sort of bring an allegory about the angel. And I think it's crucial that the angel is kind of a silly, ridiculous, absurd thing. It's something too low. It's kitsch. It's not really appropriate for serious art. And I think that's an important moment. It would be one thing to, and also the self-help book is the most popular book in the market. This is also very much about self-help. How are you going to improve yourself? So working with very familiar means of communication, but then to provoke, I think if you see the exhibition, I think each person will come out of it with a very different feeling of what this information meant, how it meant. What is that angel that's underneath the blanket? What is it? I don't think we'll answer. Yeah, well, maybe Emilia will tell us, and then we don't have to think about it.
Well, actually, I prefer you to think about it. It's a complicated work because, on one hand, we know that fallen angel, it's what? It's the opposite of angel in a way, but maybe not. Maybe he won't trying to become human again. There's so many explanations. It's very simple explanation. There is a philosophy of fallen angel, but there is another explanation we can say, like a common explanation. Ilya had a work in the 80s, the man who flew into space from his apartment. And this man was trying to escape everyday life. And he found that there is forces which actually, if he catapult himself through the roof and go into the space, he will find another life. He will be in another happier place. So maybe he become an angel when he escaped. And then how do we know, did he like to be an angel or not? Maybe he decided to come back as an artist and he tried to land in the museum. And that's maybe another explanation of angels.
Bueno, es cierto, yo creo que varias de las obras que están en la exposición solamente proponen una salida, un escape, pero no nos dicen cuál es ese escape, cuál es la vía probable. Simplemente lo hacen como de una manera, me atrevería a decir, moral. La utopía tiene que ver más con una especie de comportamiento esperado del individuo que una utopía social que requiere del concurso de todos los miembros de la sociedad. ¿Es esto así? ¿Esta utopía tiene que ver con algo puramente personal o es algo que también involucra a la sociedad en su conjunto?
I don't know. I'm a kind of remnants of failed utopia. And we were trained, and our mind was trained that it's social. We don't have individuals in this society. Utopia means that as a society, you are a group society. There is no I, there are we. And one of the reasons I couldn't function, I don't even understand how to function in Soviet Union, because for me, I is very important. We, it's a nice one, the description. I, it's what, from I, we can actually create we. But there is nothing like, if you say we, there could be individual I. And that's the main paradox of these utopian societies. We fail. But it doesn't mean that somebody else next time is not going to create utopia again, because it's a dream, it's still dream of paradise. And do you want to say something?
Something not really related directly, but I think one of the interesting experiences for me of the exhibition is that I doubt that anyone will read all of the text. I don't think anyone will. And and I think that's really the most basic assumption of seeing a work of art is that you'll see all of it and experience all of it. And so there's this negative utopia inscribed in the work from the beginning that you'll walk away feeling bad, knowing that you didn't do something you should have. That sort of feeling.
I don't completely agree with this, because I'm working right now for a week in the museum, and there is a guard, and there is the people who clean museum, and there is even visitors. So I discovered that the most people standing is around the fallen angel, young people. I don't know the reason, I can't explain. I don't know Mexican public so well, mentality of the public, but probably there is a reason they standing there. And I also discovered that practically every guard of the museum and every woman come to me and they say, we're so grateful to you to bring in angels to Mexico, because this is a time when we really need angels. And everyone already know the favorite piece. They take me there and they say, this is my favorite piece. So out of maybe dreams of utopia and, as you say, negative feelings, some people just understand this, take this exhibition very personally. And they probably have a lot of things they want from the angels. And maybe they will get it if they believe in it.
Bueno, a partir de los textos que yo he leído que escribió Emilia Kabakov, que ustedes también pueden leer en la exposición y que Matthew piensa que no todos van a leer, he tratado de formular si la posición de Emilia y Emilia Kabakov en esta exposición tiene que ver algo con una filosofía que podríamos llamar idealista, hegeliana. ¿En dónde, Matthew, pondrías tú ese pensamiento de Emilia, de este humanista que quiere proponer una solución, pero que también propone el absurdo como una vía de solución?
I just think, as I've seen Ilya's work and then Ilya and Emilia's work over time, I've been most struck by the fact that Ilya's, and you can correct me, Emilia, but that Ilya imagines a universe in which culture played a much more significant role in our everyday lives. And in that respect, and culture meaning, very clear, Raphael, Goethe, a conception of culture that is, if I were to put on my Berkeley PhD hat, I would say a culture of straight white males who are now deceased. But he very much is committed to this idea of that culture should return to a profound role in everyday life. That it shouldn't be what we see on TV and what we see in the movies. There's no inherent reason why this is the way our culture should look. Someone needs to begin the process of thinking what an other culture might look like. And it would have to be appealing in some way. It would have to be compelling in some way. And I think every work is a small model that moves us in that direction, or it aspires to move us in this direction. Though, Emilia, you know you make the art, so.
I completely agree with this. For us, culture is a temple, and museum is a temple of culture. And we do think that it has to be visited, it has to be preserved as a temple, because in a way culture is today's religious, and it's very important to have some belief, some trust in the higher things. Otherwise we become very common people. What makes us different than from the animals? If we don't have a culture. Culture is the main thing which actually differentiates us from the simple primitive life on this earth.
Yeah, sure.
Now, I have to say, what you just said, you know that a representative of socialist realism in 1955 coming to Mexico City would have said something very similar to this. That we need to have a humanist culture that's grounded in these universal values and all of this. So there seems to be some component of your art that involves paradox and the absurdity and difficulty. How does that, because it's not socialist realism that you're making. The description that that I just gave and you just gave doesn't speak to your art in some way.
Because we are, I would say, in this case, I would say we are conceptual artists. Social realism is not a concept. Social realism is a politically charged art. So all these muralists, Mexican muralists, mostly all of them, it's about people. Yes, it's a social, but not always realism, but it's a social art. It's about people. And it's very direct, and it's very one-lined. It's a very good artist, don't get me wrong, but it's one-lined, okay? What we're trying to do, we work on many levels. Yes, there is a humanistic side, there is a philosophical, there is a purely artistic, historical, with a reference to art history. So, depending on who you are, depending on what cultural background you have, you can take this work emotionally, you can take as a cultural, historical piece, artistic, or you can take it philosophically, or you can start questioning it also. Where is everything? What do I see? What do I get? What is the message? No message. You have to find the message by yourself.
Emilia, cuando tú dices que para ustedes la cultura juega un papel determinante en el establecimiento de la utopía, en el desarrollo del individuo, y hablas también, acabas de decir, que el museo es un templo, hay una especie de contradicción que veo ahí, porque hay una pieza que dentro de la exposición se llama La historia del arte alternativo, según Charles Rosenthal, las alas. Y la historia del arte alternativo, según la biografía que escribe el propio Emilia Kabakov de este personaje imaginario llamado Charles Rosenthal, hace pensar que hay un arte que es legitimado por el museo, que es conocido como arte oficial, y hay otro arte que no está siendo legitimado por el museo, que puede ser el arte que hacía Charles Rosenthal, el arte desconocido, el artista que murió en un intento por hacer algo nuevo, el artista que se dejó vencer por las dificultades. Entonces, me parece que hay una posición ambivalente o contradictoria allí, porque por un lado estamos refiriéndonos al museo como un templo y por el otro lado estamos tratando de validar a este arte alternativo que nadie conoce. ¿Cuál es tu solución de este dilema o no sé si hay solución?
First of all, I don't see any dilemma, because if you start from the very beginning, you understand the concept. When we decided to create these three characters, that was a character, don't forget about it. And we were looking for an alternative road, not to the museum, but to the Soviet development of culture, to the social realism as an art form. Because social realism dominated the art scenery in Soviet Union. And our character is created in a way of continuation. What would happen to art of Russia if it wouldn't go by the way of Malevich on one hand, Russian constructivism, and social realism? So when you talk about this character Charles Rosenthal, presumably if the art history of Russia, of Soviet Union, would go by the way of Charles Rosenthal, and Charles Rosenthal is an artist, imaginary, who's trying to put all the movements together, all the things that he knows in art together, and create some kind of art which has all these elements, very different. He is an enthusiast of Soviet culture because he's in the very beginning. He started in 1917-20, he is very enthusiastic, they build in the new world. It's like Lisitsky. Lisitsky in the beginning is the most enthusiastic artist. He does everything government asks him. He is a communist. He wants to create new man, new world, new art. And Lisitsky stay in Russia, and we know we know he changed his art. We don't know how he ended. Maybe he was disappointed. Maybe his personal history is not very clear. We can't get into his mind. But Charles Rosenthal immigrated, as you know. He went to Paris, so he never knew how Soviet Union continued. What happened? Stalinist time, all this destruction, all this oppression. He died. Next artist is Ilya Kabakov. Not the Ilya Kabakov you see, it's imaginary Ilya Kabakov. And Ilya Kabakov is a product of Soviet utopia, of Soviet culture, of Soviet system. He's very disappointed. So if Charles Rosenthal paintings are full of life, full of white light, they're optimistic. Ilya Kabakov full of darkness, very pessimistic. We have a very interesting episode. This exhibition was presented completely first time in Russia, in Moscow, in a garage. There is an art space. And what happened, it was like rooms and rooms after Rosenthal, then Kabakov, and the third artist is artist after Perestroika. So the third artist does painting which is kind of painted only half of it, and the other half is empty. Why? We have few explanations. Maybe because he see world in two parts. He never finished. Maybe because Russian always start something and never finish. Or maybe because during Perestroika there was no toilet paper, so he used papers. And he cut them in half to make them smaller pieces. I'm sorry for such a prosaic explanation. So he only see world in the small part of it, cut in half. But when you look at it, Kabakov was very pessimistic. And there was an old woman from Soviet times, a visitor. She came to the exhibition. So she very calmly continued going from Rosenthal exhibit to Kabakov. And when she came to Kabakov, she had a can. She raised her can and she was trying to destroy the painting. Luckily for us, guards were in time to catch her. And they asked her, why you, it's old woman, like maybe her 80s, why are you destroying? And she said, because that's what destroyed our Soviet life. We were very happy, we were very secure, we had a beautiful life. And this darkness came on us and destroyed us. Why? On the paintings, there was kind of Soviet happy life, depiction of Soviet happy pictures, and then darkness coming and kind of, the more you go through exhibitions, the more painting covered by darkness, and then by the end you have completely black paintings. And so she took it very personally, she took it literally. This darkness is taking over our life, and that's what happened with Perestroika. So it's no contradiction. It's a museum work, but it's start from the beginning, going to the end, different periods of it, and alternative is a key word. It's alternative, it's imaginary alternative.
One thing, you can always be sometimes too biographical. In fact, most of the time I think when you're biographical it's not helpful, but one of the things that Ilya will point to is the fact that he was brought up essentially as an only child by his mother, and so much of his work deals with domestic scenes, domestic activity, and one of the things that I've come to understand, or think I understand about the work, is that the art of the 20th century has so often been understood in the rubric, through the rubric of the avant-garde, which is essentially a military metaphor. It's a very masculinist metaphor, which involves rupture, destruction, replacement, all of these things about leaping out into the world and doing things. And Ilya's mentality is much more, I think, a mentality that comes out of the kitchen. You know, when you're trying to make food, you don't have a lot of rupture and destruction. You blend things, you mix things, you see if they taste good, you see if they don't, you work harder next time, come up with a better recipe, that sort of thing. And it's that mentality that's very much opposed to the avant-garde. And all of the Charles Rosenthal paintings are just sort of a manifestation of that, the flowing, the mixing, and all of that, instead of the rupture and breakage.
I just correct one little thing. It didn't come out of the kitchen because he never had a kitchen. He was raised in a school, boarding school, for talented children. So I would correct this thing, saying I would rephrase it like this: it was a dream about kitchen, which he never had. Well, to eat, of course, not to prepare something.
Okay. Now let's go to the topic of the total installation. I'm trying to understand total installation for the last months, and I don't think I actually got it right. And I want to, Emilia, I want you to explain to the audience, to myself, what does total installation mean? I thought in the first place that it was just some concept derived from the idea by Wagner of the total work of art, and you being a musician or having studies in music, I thought that this was also part of the concept, and but I'm still not very clear about it. Can you please explain in your own words what is total installation?
Okay, I start with the very beginning of creation. When God created the world, our earth, that's a total installation. Because we have a very specific atmosphere on this earth where we live. When we go to the church, it's a total installation. Because we have a very specific installation of everything. We expect chairs, we expect certain colors, certain lighting, paintings on the wall. We expect the altar. That's total installation. When we come to the museum, we have a very specific expectations how a museum should look. Of course, lately it looks completely different, but traditionally museum is a museum. Total installation is a space which we create. We use everything in order to create not just work of art, but specific atmosphere for the viewer, which change your perception of the space, your perception of time, and get viewer engaged. In order to do this, we paint the surrounding walls, floor, sometimes even ceiling. We put the very specific light. We use paintings, voices. I mean, everything is possible in order to get the specific atmosphere. And you have total installation requires from the viewer attention and time. And then it plays, it's like a theater, but the difference between theater and total installation is that when you come to the theater or in the movie, you're watching the story which somebody told you, but there's somebody already playing the story. When you come in installation, there is no actor. The viewer becomes an actor. It becomes your story. You add all the personal elements, feelings, knowledge. And it's now it's your, depending on you, and you can turn it and understand it any way you want. You just have a fabula of the story, you have a narrative, but everything else is yours.
The only thing I would say is that I do think that there's this very basic question. You mentioned Wagner, whether we want to be totally controlled by an artwork or whether we want to maintain our distance from it. And I think it's a very interesting and problematic for me question of whether you should be controlled by the artwork or whether you should control your engagement with it. To be art historical, which I'll be for 2 seconds, someone like Michael Fried would say that you should be in control of the experience. It should not control you. It's easy to control people in the world. It's hard to make a work of art that keeps that distance. So I think there's always this tension that you'll have moments within the exhibition that feel very conventional and feel very much that you're looking at a work of art and experiencing it, and then other moments that take you away from that and give you a different experience.
Well, in a way, painting is a window into the world, and we all know how to judge painting. We know how to look at it. Total installation, it's a new experience. It's a window inside yourself, inside somebody's life. So it's a three-dimensional painting. Actually, installation, what it is a three-dimensional painting. So if we apply our experience, how we judge the painting, how we look at it, and we try to walk into the painting, that's total installation. It will give you the viewer possibility to walk into the painting. You agree?
That's what, do you want to walk into your painting? You know, do you want to keep the distance? It's, you know, one of the things that Fried says is that it's crucial that you can walk in, and some people will ignore the painting. That's crucial. A truly great painting won't be recognized by everyone as something significant. And yeah, well, there we go. So then I guess there is a certain component.
Bien, yo creo que esto también da un pie para hablar de el hecho muy afortunado de que esta exposición esté sucediendo dentro de este lugar, dentro del colegio de el antiguo colegio de San Ildefonso, porque una de las líneas de la muestra es la utopía, ya lo he dicho, y todo el mundo sabemos que aquí, en este colegio, también se planteó la utopía social mexicana post-revolucionaria en 1920, y estamos precisamente delante de uno de los primeros murales que se pintaron como ese programa utópico. Y lo que es curioso y que acaba de mencionar ahora Matthew, es el hecho de que caminar hacia dentro de una pintura. El muralismo también estaba planteado, como una forma de expresión de la obtención de metas elevadas, de identificaciones nacionales, quizás ignorando las diferencias particulares, pero sí una gran sombrilla que cubría a toda una serie de grupos diferentes. Y también la idea de que uno nunca podía observar una pintura mural de un solo golpe de vista, que había que caminar para ver la pintura y reconocer los varios momentos. Entonces hay algo ahí también de instalación total, diría yo, en el sentido de obligar al público a verse dentro de la obra de arte. Pero, Matthew, tú que conoces este lado del modernismo soviético, que has estado viendo en estos últimos días algunas de las expresiones murales de este colegio, ¿cuáles dirías tú que serían esas similitudes o diferencias entre el realismo socialista utópico soviético y este proyecto muralista mexicano postrevolucionario?
The artwork here, the murals are always disturbing.
Ok, yo sé de dónde viene el comentario, pero creo que el público, a menos que ya quieran hacer una pregunta directa a Matthew, ¿por qué esta cuestión de un arte perturbador? ¿Qué es lo que has visto tú en estos murales que te perturba tanto?
You know, everyone knows I don't need to answer that. The experience speaks for itself. And when you look at the murals that you typically saw in the Soviet Union, they are disturbing, but you have to try to see, I think, the disturbance. You have to reflect on it a bit. And it's most striking for me is that the disturbance is visceral in this case. That's my experience. More significantly, I don't know, what is Emilia's experience of all this?
No, there is a lot of violence, of feelings in these Mexican murals, all of them. It's very social, it's very kind of in your face. And when you start looking at the details, it's scary, but you understand where it comes from. So many feelings, so many emotions, and I absolutely agree with Matthew.
Bueno, sí, creo que definitivamente si ustedes ven la exposición Angelología y después ven los murales y la exposición, encontrarán sí un abismo en la representación. Lo que es curioso es que en la exposición de Angelología no hay ninguna manifestación de violencia y todo parece ser como, sí, el paraíso, cómo llegar al paraíso, cómo encontrarse con un ángel, cómo mejorarse a sí mismo. Y las prescripciones son: póngase unas alas y échese a volar. Y lo que vemos en el muralismo mexicano es, pues sí, un enorme dramatismo con una dosis de violencia, que según la historia, pues era parte de la construcción. La construcción tenía que venir de la destrucción. Y en ese sentido también hay un parangón con ciertas ideas precisamente ahora que en este año se celebra el inicio de la Primera Guerra Mundial, había gente en Inglaterra y en Francia que sostenía que la guerra era la única manera de purificar al mundo y que estaban a favor de la guerra para destruir un orden del pasado y crear otro de forma violenta. Y me parece que ese es un poco el argumento también en general de los moralistas. Había que destruir un orden corrupto para establecer un nuevo orden a partir de cero.
We live in a different media environment today, and one of the things that's most striking to me about the Kabakov's work is that anyone knows that the fastest way to get anyone's attention is to use sex and violence. Those are the most attractive things in the world. They attract an audience, and they assiduously avoid sex and violence.
I don't think we have so many ways. We come in a way from idealistic society. Of course, I would always say that the only country who doesn't have one person believing in communism, that's Soviet Union. It's absolutely non-acceptable. We know it doesn't exist, we know it's impossible. But we have to believe in something. And being half of our life told that we have to be idealistic, we don't believe in idealism, but obviously, unconsciously, we do believe in idealism. So when the condition of life improves, suddenly we become idealistic. We become, I wouldn't say communist, but we become some kind of socialist after leaving Soviet Union, exactly for this reason, because we didn't want to be living under communist, socialist regime. And we're talking about paradise on earth, and we're talking about angels. But by the way, I was just now at Museo Popolare, yes? And there's wings everywhere there, and every creature there is a wings. So angels exist in paradise, in hell. You can see them all around in every culture, and not only Russian and not only Christian. You have them in paganism, you have them in Muslim. There is wings. That's not even figure of human being. The wings are there. So something they represent in human mentality, the wings. Escapism, which is very important. They give us, it's a dream about flying away, flying somewhere, flying higher. Escapism, that's all. I don't know how to explain this phenomenon.
Bueno, sí, pero además de esta noción de escapismo, también hay en las instalaciones de la exposición, hay varias instalaciones que sugieren la idea de interiorismo, de introducirse a un lugar privado, de tener un lugar propio. Lo veo en la instalación de El cobertizo de mi abuelo, o en la instalación que se llama Cómo mejorarse. Presentan espacios íntimos donde el individuo, a través de la meditación, logra algo. No es como un escapismo hacia afuera, sino es como un proyectarse hacia adentro de sí mismo. ¿No lo ves así?
It's also an escapism, because even my grandfather said, you look into somebody's life, and this person is, we don't know what his grandfather was doing there, right? But suddenly, after he died, we discover that he was escaping. It's maybe his conversation with an angel, maybe angel was visiting him, maybe he just imagined this his angel, maybe he was outright crazy. How do we know? We have a glimpse in somebody's way to escape from everyday life. So it is an escapism, always.
Ok, ahora me parece importante que el público sepa que hay una serie de obras que se llaman álbumes. Estos álbumes son archivos que recogen la vida de personajes ficticios, reales, fragmentarios, totales, y que me parece que también forman parte de la fundación de toda la obra de los Kabakov, no solamente de esta exposición, sino de muchas otras. Particularmente hay 3 álbumes en la exposición. Uno se llama Surikov, el angustioso, otro es Komarov, el volador, y hay otro que se llama Fuentes. En el caso de Fuentes, que es una sucesión de 26 imágenes donde aparece un hombre desnudo debajo de una regadera, hay una metamorfosis que sucede debajo del agua, y esa me parece que es una de las piezas más esenciales de la exposición, en el sentido de que va a reflejar que el individuo se encierra, se encapsula dentro del agua en un intento por escucharse a sí mismo, por salir de sí mismo. ¿Cómo lo interpretas tú, Emilia, esta pieza que se llama Fuentes?
I would pretty prefer that Matthew explain, because he's an art historian.
I think it's interesting that the most common theme in all of Ilya's early work is our depictions of the shower. It's incredibly common, and he very rarely depicts the human body, almost never in its totality, except in these shower drawings. So that piece that you're referring to is a late piece, and most of the time there's an ambiguous, no, I'll take that back. It's always a male figure underneath a nozzle, and sometimes water comes out, but sometimes nothing comes out. Sometimes other stuff comes out, and that is little drops or things that seem to be floating in the air. And it's interesting that he does this obsessively. So think about a naked body that presents itself underneath a nozzle that has ambiguous things coming out of it. You can think about that in a lot of different ways.
You can also think about cleaning, purifying yourself of ideas, of sins. It's a process of purifying. But in this case, there is sometimes water purifying you, sometimes it's suffocating you, sometimes it leaves you open to the world without any clothes. So there's many, many meanings in these showers, and they're very disturbing images, because figure of naked man under the shower, sometimes covered kind of, with a bubble of water. Sometimes the water is in the form of wings, sometimes in the form of some animal, or just drops. And it's a lot of images, a lot of explanations, and a lot of meanings as well.
Muy bien. Para finalizar, quisiera hacer un comentario porque en el transcurso de la curaduría yo había hecho una lectura de esta exposición que empezaba con el planteamiento utópico de un hombre que va en búsqueda de los ángeles y concluía con una instalación en la que vemos a un ángel caído. Y al llegar Emilia aquí la semana pasada dijo, no, así no es la historia. La historia empieza por el ángel caído que está aquí en el patio de la recepción y concluye con una escena milagrosa. Indiscutiblemente Emilia tiene todo el derecho de presentar la historia como ella la quiere hacer. Sin embargo, creo que hay varias posibilidades interpretativas y ustedes también tendrán las suyas. Pero, ¿qué querrías decir tú sobre este ordenamiento que tiene la exposición? Empezamos con el ángel caído y terminamos con una visión milagrosa que se llama el observador.
The world starts with a sin, Adam and Eve, okay? Fallen angel. So in this case, and there are not only this kind of very sophisticated explanations, there is also very primitive installation, because we didn't have a right space to put the angel we want to put there, how to meet an angel, right? So let's be honest about this. And we have to adjust our explanation to the situation we already have in hand. So it's about fallen angels, and we build our hopes and we build our dreams, and on the way we meet an angel, and we're trying to become an angel. So there is a whole transformational process going during the whole exhibition. And then how we end, what's the best way to end the exhibition? Like with the miracle. And it's a miracle. When we look through the binoculars, we see a miracle. And I'm not going to tell you what miracle, because you have to go and look through binoculars.
Matthew, you have a grin in your face. It seems that you don't agree with this.
No, I completely agree. Yeah, I think that's great. I was kind of expecting the question and answer period to kick in. That's what I was kind of, yeah.
Thank you so much for not having questions. Makes my life so easy. And thank you for coming. It's very nice of you. And I hope you see this exhibition, and I hope you like it. And there is no message, just enjoy it. And whatever you get out of it, it will be your experience.
A ver, Eric, ¿tú quieres hacer una pregunta?
Sí, yo quería preguntar.
A ver, vamos a Emilia. Let's listen to Eric.
O sea, yo quería hacer una pregunta sobre la postura de Ilia hacia... Quería preguntar a Emilia y a Matthew la postura de Ilia hacia la factura de sus obras, sobre todo la pintura en específico, porque hemos visto que a veces él mismo pinta la obra y posteriormente esta obra se vuelve una impresión, un facsímil que se puede presentar en otra exhibición, a veces con el título distinto. Por ejemplo, el libro interesante que está en la exposición ha participado precisamente en la exposición de Charles Rosenthal, pero con otro título, La historia del arte con una intersección. Entonces, en la primera exposición que hizo en la galería de Dina Berti en París, mandó un contrato e instrucciones para que se reprodujeran ciertas pinturas. Entonces es una actitud muy singular de un pintor que muchas veces puede no ser el realizador de su propia pintura, en este caso, pero el concepto él lo tiene. Y ahora que hemos recibido las 3 pinturas que tenemos en la exposición, vimos que efectivamente son impresiones, no la obra. Entonces esa actitud de Ilia, sí, me gustaría que nos explicaran un poco esta postura ante las artes.
Okay, situation is very different here and very different when he did the Neverny exhibition. When he did the Neverny exhibition, it was physically impossible to get painting out of Soviet Union. So it was in a way forced to do it. And these paintings, when we have them in the catalog Raisonné, it says that it wasn't painted by Ilia. He recognized them because they were very well done, and it was his concept and his drawing for the painting. It wasn't done by somebody else. It's his drawing transferred to painting. But he didn't do it as a concept, like many artists do. The assistant do painting and he signed. That wasn't done because of this. It was done because of physical impossibility to bring the painting to the exhibition. And he wanted people to see his work. When he, here with the prints, it's because, frankly, it's very important for this exhibition to have these paintings, because the concept is about angels and about inspiration, and angels bring in inspiration, but it was also impossible to bring paintings for many reasons. You know, physical and personal, because they're in private collection, and private collection is not always very easy to get what we want. Sometimes collectors cooperate, and sometimes they don't. This is a case where they didn't cooperate. So we made these copies on canvas. They not count as paintings, real paintings. They can't be sold. They're just simply exhibition material. So it's not for sale. It's not a concept. It's a necessity done because we really have to do exhibition. We didn't have a choice.
Thank you, Emilia. ¿Alguien más? No me queda más que darle las gracias. Thank you, Emilia, for being with us today. Thank you for bringing this such a wonderful exhibition of your work. Please thank Ilya for such a great work. And Matthew, at a very short notice, you came here and saved the situation. Thank you so much. Okay. Muchas gracias a ustedes, al Colegio de San Ildefonso, Nina Menocal. Muchísimas gracias. Por favor, vean la exposición y traten de hacerlo a solas. Gracias.